Welcome, listener. Before you hear this story, take a breath and let the world around you quiet down. Every sound has meaning here, the kind that hides between walls, the kind you feel before you understand. This is not a story about monsters. It's about what happens when something ordinary starts paying attention to you. He hadn't meant to notice her, not at first. Robin was just the neighbor with quiet habits, a faint light behind a curtain when the street went dark. But loneliness sharpens small things into rituals, and soon he found himself watching her window each night, waiting for the moment the silence learned his name. His bedroom window framed Robin's kitchen like a small aquarium of light. He hadn't meant to watch her. It started from loneliness more than curiosity. His friends had drifted off into cars and parties and phone screens that didn't include him. His mother fell asleep with her earbuds in, a quiet shape in a louder world. And so he found comfort in the faint pulse of light across the fence. At 7, her lamp came on. At 9, the porch bulb flickered awake. At 11, both went out together. It was a rhythm, the kind that said the world was still predictable. Then one night the rain came heavy, loud enough to blur the edges of things. Through the glass, he saw her barefoot in her garden, robe plastered to her skin. She was digging with her hands, frantic, like someone trying to rescue something instead of bury it. When she rose, she held a small object dangling from a chain. It caught the porch light once, a sharp, silver flash that split the night, then vanished as she closed her fist around it. When she looked up, her eyes met his window. He ducked too late. By the time he looked again, she was gone. After that, her light stopped following the rules. The lamp burned through the night. The porch bulb blinked 3 times, paused, and blinked again. Always 3. He tried not to count, but the rhythm crawled under his skin. 2 nights later, a low hum leaked from the vent above his desk. It wasn't the air conditioner. It wasn't the refrigerator. It was patient, steady, almost musical. When he pressed his ear to the vent, the sound rose, shaping itself around his heartbeat. When he covered it with his palm, the tone slipped into the wall and waited. He told himself it was pipes or wind, but his breath disagreed. Outside, Robin whispered to someone he couldn't see. "You need to eat," she said, her voice trembling. He waited for a bark, a leash jingle, proof of a dog that existed. There was nothing. The next morning, he noticed a bowl of milk sitting on her porch. The surface had turned gray with dust. He promised himself he would stop watching. He didn't. The hum followed him now, weaving through the walls like a thought that wouldn't leave. Through the blinds, he saw Robin moving slowly from room to room. The chain around her neck glinted when she passed beneath the kitchen light. Once she raised her hand toward him, distracted, as if waving to someone else entirely. He waved back before he could stop himself. Thursday brought the boyfriend. The boy saw him through the curtain, tall, impatient, his gestures cutting the air. Robin shook her head again and again. The man reached for her, and a bright flare filled the doorway, white, silent, absolute. When the light faded, he stumbled down the steps, clutching his wrist. Robin stayed there, framed in the door, her face blank, except for the smallest flicker of a smile that vanished before he could decide if it was real. That night the house smelled strange. A sweetness, metallic, like fruit, rotting over coins. He told his mother it was the sink drain. She nodded, without listening. At 9:17, the refrigerator clicked off and the hum in the vent deepened to match his pulse. Through the window, he saw Robin walking through her kitchen. The amulet, he could see it clearly now, glowed faintly at her throat, breathing with her. He slept in pieces. In one dream, the garden swelled like lungs. Stones rolled aside to reveal eyes beneath the soil. When he woke, his hands were clenched, nails cutting half-moons into his palms. The vent whispered, a voice too low to understand but close enough to feel. "We're awake now." By Saturday, she no longer pretended to plant anything. She worked the soil like someone completing a set of instructions. The circle she dug widened each day, its stones cleaned and rearranged in perfect symmetry. She spoke to the ground itself, coaxing, pleading, waiting. On the porch, 2 bowls waited. Only one was ever empty. When the mail carrier came, she shielded the pendant with her hand and signed for a parcel using her left hand. She whispered something to the box before carrying it inside. The boy tried not to imagine answers. That evening, the sun collapsed behind the houses and the world turned the color of old water. Robin stood at the edge of her circle, the amulet twisting between her fingers. For a moment, she looked like her old self again, the neighbor who used to laugh about trash cans and raccoons. Then the hums swelled, her body stiffened, and she raised the pendant higher, as if checking whether it was alive. He told himself this was ordinary loneliness, that people invented patterns when they were alone. But when he turned from the window, the silence pressed back against the glass. It was warm. It was listening. And for the first time, he wondered whether she had found something, or whether something had found her. The week that followed moved with the rhythm of fever. The boy tried not to look toward her house, but his eyes found it anyway. It had become part of how he measured time. He would glance at her windows before brushing his teeth, at the porch light before bed, as if her strange routines had replaced his own. The hum still came every night from the vent, steady as a pulse, sometimes low, sometimes higher, as though testing which sound could make him listen harder. Robin changed too quickly for logic to catch up. Some days she was in her yard at dawn, kneeling in the dirt like she was praying. Other days she didn't appear at all. He noticed her curtains drawn during daylight, the faint orange glow of candlelight at odd hours. Once, he saw her walk across the yard with her hand over her chest, as if holding something back inside her. When she reached the circle of stones, the amulet caught the light, flashing the way lightning does behind clouds. There, gone, remembered only in the eyes. He started writing things down in a notebook, times and details, trying to turn fear into data. The list became long and inconsistent. There was no pattern, only tension. On Wednesday, the pattern broke entirely. At the edge of her property, half hidden beneath leaves, lay the body of her dog. It didn't look dead at first. It looked posed. The eyes were open, glassy, the limbs stiff as wood. There were no wounds, no struggle, no blood, only stillness. The air above it felt heavy, humming faintly like a low current. The ground trembled when he touched it, a pulse rising from beneath the soil. He ran back to the fence without daring to look behind him. That night, the hum followed him home. It clung to the corners of his room, vibrating against the lamp's metal base, humming softly through the walls. He stuffed a towel under the vent. The noise slid through anyway. When he finally slept, He dreamed of the dog again, standing in Robin's yard, mouth open, a faint ring of light glowing in its throat. The next day, she left for work or somewhere else. He waited until her car disappeared down the street, then crossed the fence. The air on her side felt strange, heavier, charged. The circle of stones was larger now, reshaped. Each stone bore tiny carvings, thin as spider silk, symbols too intricate to have been made with her hands alone. In the center of the ring, he saw a small leather-bound book pressed halfway into the dirt. He pulled it free. The cover was damp, stamped with her initials, a diary. He opened it, and the pages smelled like metal and smoke. At first, the entries were ordinary, lists, errands, grocery notes, but soon the tone changed. "The hum is louder underground," she wrote. "Echo growls at the drainpipes." Another line. "It feels warm even when I leave it in water." Page after page dissolved into frantic scrawl. "He talks when I sleep. There are voices in the roots. The dog won't eat, but something else is feeding." The final line, written crooked at the bottom of a page, said, "If it asks for a name, don't answer." He snapped the diary shut and turned toward the fence. That was when he heard the door creak open behind him. Robin's voice drifted through the still air. "Who's there?" He ducked beneath the porch, heart pounding. Her feet appeared at the steps, pale in the half-light. She stood perfectly still for a long time, breathing hard. Then she whispered something soft, and the hum under the floor shifted to match her words. When she moved away, the vibration faded, like breath leaving lungs. He didn't remember crossing back into his yard, only the sound of his door slamming behind him. The diary shook in his hands. He thought about throwing it away but couldn't. He opened it again. Near the end, between two damp pages, a new line had appeared, written in the same slanted hand, but darker, fresher. He's reading it now. The air vent exhaled. Warm air touched his cheek, and the hum folded into a whisper almost kind in tone. "We know." He slammed the book shut. It felt hot, pulsing faintly against his fingers. He shoved it under his bed and stayed awake until sunrise, listening to the sound of his own breathing. Somewhere between the ticks of the clock, the hum started again, quiet but patient, as if waiting for him to fall asleep. Morning arrived late, pale light stretching across his room like it was afraid to touch anything. The towel beneath the vent had fallen during the night, though he didn't remember pulling it out. The air coming through smelled faintly of earth after rain. For a moment, he thought he heard breathing inside the walls, soft, steady, not human. When he pressed his palm against the vent, warmth pulsed back once, like a heartbeat acknowledging his own. He avoided Robin's house all day, yet every sound from outside felt connected to it. The faint chime of her wind bells, the click of her gate, even the crows that perched on her fence and stared as though they'd been trained. His mother noticed his quietness and asked if something was wrong. He wanted to tell her about the hum, about the diary, about the way the air seemed to listen now, but the words jammed behind his teeth. "I'm fine," he said, and she believed him. At dusk, he saw Robin again. She was in her yard, standing inside the circle of stones, her hands outstretched as if measuring invisible walls. Candles burned around her, each one placed at precise points. The amulet glowed faintly, lighting her face from below. For the first time, he noticed how thin she'd become. Skin pale as paper, eyes hollow and fixed on something beyond his sight. She was mouthing words, repeating them rhythmically. The sound didn't carry, but somehow he felt it, each syllable pressing against the air in his own lungs. He backed away from the window and closed the blinds, but the rhythm didn't stop. It continued faintly through the walls. That night, he dreamed of the diary again. Its pages flapped like wings, ink spilling upward instead of down, forming black shapes on the ceiling. A voice whispered from inside it, speaking in Robin's tone but saying something else entirely. "He's learning the language," it said. When he woke, the room smelled faintly of burnt wax. The diary was on his desk, open to a blank page. In the corner, faint and wet, one small word appeared as he watched. Yes. The next day, everything in the neighborhood felt wrong. Birds circled without landing. The air buzzed faintly, not from insects or power lines, but from beneath the ground itself. His mother complained that her radio kept turning on by itself. The refrigerator hummed a note that matched the sound in his vent. He realized it wasn't just his house. The hum had spread. He went outside after dark and saw light leaking through Robin's windows, a soft gold that pulsed in waves. The hum grew stronger the closer he got, not loud, but dense, like air thick with invisible pressure. Her front door was slightly open. He hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. The smell hit him first, copper and something sweet, like spoiled fruit. The living room was filled with candles, melted to puddles on the floor. In the center stood a table covered with open pages of her diary, pages he didn't remember tearing out. Across them lay the amulet, burning faintly even without flame. The air above it shimmered, almost liquid. It bent the light, twisted it. He heard whispering, not from the object but from somewhere deeper in the house. Words half-formed, half-remembered. "Robin," he called. Her voice came from the hallway. "You shouldn't have read it." It was calm, like she'd expected him. She stepped into view, her pupils dilated until her eyes were almost black. Her hands were trembling, but her mouth smiled as if she were relieved. "It's awake now," she said. "It likes attention." She reached toward him, and the amulet on the table twitched, its chain tightening as if it heard her. He stumbled back, knocking into a chair. The sound made her flinch, then laugh, softly. "It doesn't want to hurt you," she said. "It only wants to be understood." Behind her, shadows moved on the wall, slow, rhythmic, like breathing. For a moment he thought it was the candlelight. Then one of the shadows blinked. He ran, out the door, across the fence, through his yard. The hum followed him like a voice under the ground. When he slammed his door, it stopped. The house was quiet again. He dropped to the floor, breathing hard. When he looked up, his computer screen had turned itself on. Lines of text filled the page, appearing one by one, matching the words he'd read in the diary. He watched, paralyzed, as new lines formed on their own. The last one froze the air in his lungs. "She's not the only one who listens." He turned off the monitor and crawled into bed, but the glow from next door didn't fade. It pulsed gently through his curtains, steady as a heartbeat. Just before sleep claimed him, the vent above his bed whispered again. A new voice now, softer, familiar, his own. The next few days felt like living inside someone else's dream. The boy tried to act normal, school, chores, conversation, but the world no longer lined up. Hallway sounds came a second too late. Reflections lagged behind their owners. The hum beneath everything had settled into a pattern like breath, slow and patient. He knew it was everywhere now, Even the silence carried its echo. Robin's curtains never opened. At night, her house glowed faintly, not from lamps, but from something alive inside. Sometimes he saw her in the yard again, though he wasn't sure it was her. The figure moved slower, body bending wrong, as if each motion had to be remembered before it could be performed. The amulet hung against her chest, swaying gently, pulsing in time with the hum. The boy stopped sleeping. When he did, his dreams weren't dreams but repetitions of real things. A knock at the door, a whisper through the vent, the sense that someone was sitting just outside the frame of vision, waiting for permission to enter. On the third night, he woke to the smell of damp soil and found footprints leading from his window to the hallway and back again. His mother didn't believe him when he told her. "You're just overtired," she said. But later, when the lights flickered and the refrigerator door creaked open by itself, she stopped meeting his eyes. He couldn't bear it anymore. The diary had begun to hum. When he touched it, the sound changed pitch. The ink on its pages bled sideways, as though trying to escape. He carried it outside, intending to bury it where he'd found it, but the ground felt soft beneath his feet, breathing almost. He knelt, dug with his hands, but the soil moved first, lifting in small waves, forming shapes before collapsing again. He backed away, shaking. That night, Robin knocked on his door. 3 gentle taps. His mother answered. "Oh," she said, startled, and stepped aside. Robin smiled politely, though the expression didn't reach her eyes. The amulet glowed faintly against her throat. "I think your son borrowed something of mine," she said softly. "A book." Her tone was calm, but every word felt memorized. He stepped into the doorway, clutching the diary. "I was just going to return it," he said. Robin's smile widened. "It doesn't belong to me anymore," she said. "It belongs to whoever listens longest." Her gaze flicked to the vent behind him. "And you've been listening, haven't you?" The hum in the walls deepened. His mother frowned, looking from one to the other. "What are you talking about?" she asked. Robin ignored her. "It likes new voices," she said, eyes brightening. "It likes learning how people sound when they're afraid." He slammed the door. The knock came again immediately. 1, 2, 3. His mother shouted his name, but her voice broke, glitching mid-syllable like a recording skipping. Then silence. He pressed his ear to the wood and heard breathing on both sides of the door, hers and something slower behind her. When he finally opened it, the porch was empty. The house felt wrong after that. Colder, longer. Shadows stretched too far across the floor. The hum had taken up residence in the air ducts, the pipes, even the wiring. He unplugged every device he owned, but the glow from the computer monitor returned each night anyway. Lines of text kept forming across the screen, fragments from Robin's diary written in his own handwriting. On the 4th night, he woke to find the vent grill unscrewed and lying on the carpet. Warm air drifted out, carrying a faint whisper. He leaned closer, expecting static. Instead, he heard his mother's voice. "Come down," she said gently. "Robin's here." He crept to the top of the stairs. The living room was dark except for the light leaking through the window from next door. His mother stood at the front door, her posture strange, head tilted slightly, smiling in a way that made his stomach twist. Robin stood beside her, holding the amulet in her hand. The glow lit both their faces from below. "It's okay," his mother said. "She's going to help us understand." He turned to run, but the hum in the walls swelled, shaking the floor. The air thickened, vibrating around him. From the vent behind, a hand emerged, small, gray, too many joints, and brushed his ankle. He kicked free and stumbled into his room. The diary lay open on the desk, its pages fluttering, though there was no wind. The handwriting shifted as he watched, forming new words in a looping script. If you resist, it learns slower. If you let it in, it teaches. He slammed the book shut and pressed it to his chest. The walls shuddered once, then went still. From downstairs came the sound of his mother's voice again, softer now. "It's already here," she said. He stayed awake until dawn, clutching the diary, listening as the hum faded into the sound of morning traffic. When the first sunlight hit the window, the vent sighed one final breath, warm and almost human, before falling quiet. He thought maybe it was over. He wanted to believe it was over. But from the house next door came a single sound, 3 soft knocks, and the faint, unmistakable rhythm of something breathing that did not need lungs to do it. By evening, the house next door had fallen completely silent, the kind of silence that gathers like a crowd. He told himself he wouldn't go back. He told himself the hum could be starved the way a bad habit can. But at 9:17, his refrigerator clicked off and stayed off, and the quiet grew heavy until it bent the air in his room. He stood for a long time in that pressure and then crossed the yard with his hands open, as if approaching an animal. Robin's door was ajar. The smell washed over him, warm pennies and candle smoke. The living room glowed with low, patient light. Candles guttered along the baseboards and up the stairs like tiny watchmen. On the table lay the torn-out pages from the diary, arranged into a circle with gaps the size of breaths. The amulet sat in the middle. No chain now, only the disc, dim and watchful. Every time his own heart beat, the light across its surface shifted a fraction late. He whispered her name, and it felt like stepping into cold water. The walls breathed once. The vent above the sofa sighed as if relieved to have him back. He took a step toward the table, and the amulet turned, not rolling, not sliding, but turning, a single degree toward him, a compass needle aligning with a place that did not appear on maps. "Don't touch," said a voice behind him. His mother stood in the hallway, hair loose, eyes soft and strange. Robin stood just beyond her shoulder, thinner than a picture, the hollows under her cheekbones filled with shadow. The pendant he'd seen around her neck was gone. The throat looked bare and bruised by memory. His mother rested a hand against the wall as if steadying herself against a ship's roll. "It's almost done," she said gently, as if explaining a recipe. "What is?" he asked, and Robin smiled with all the grief in the world behind it. "The part where it needs us to pretend it isn't real," she said. "After that, it's only listening. Listening until it knows enough to talk without a mouth." He turned in a slow circle. The air felt thick. The vent over the stove breathed a rhythm so close to his own that he wanted to correct it. "I'm taking the book," he said. "I'm burning the pages. I'm ending this." "It doesn't live in paper," Robin said. "It lives in attention." His mother's hand slipped from the wall. "Honey," she said, "we don't have to fight it." The way she said "we" sounded like a new word she hadn't spoken aloud until now. He grabbed the diary anyway. The pages were warm as skin. Ink skittered sideways under his thumb like minnows. A moment later, the first upstairs step creaked, followed by another. The rhythm of feet, but wrong, like someone hanging their weight in the pauses between planks. He looked up. Robin stood at the bottom of the staircase, but her body was reflected on the ceiling first. A woman-shaped shadow crawled along the plaster upside down, hands splayed, head tilted, hair hanging straight. Then the real Robin followed the shadow's path slowly, her limbs delayed, like a bad copy trying to become good. She took one step, the shadow took it first. She took another, the shadow paused, and then moved on. By the third step, he couldn't tell which one was teaching the other. "Don't," he whispered, because that was the only word left. And then she was above him, not on the ceiling, not on the stairs, but above, suspended in the negative space of the house as if gravity had misunderstood its job. Her eyes were too wide, her mouth too still. The corners of the room bent inward, the way rooms do in dreams when the dream wants to keep you. He ran, through the door, across the porch, stumbling the way a person stumbles in a new body. The night felt enormous and sharp. Behind him, feet hit wood with a slap that didn't belong to feet. The porch light blinked once, twice, three, and each blink pushed his vision a fraction further from what it had been before. He made it to his yard. The hum dropped into a note so low it became a feeling. It pushed against his knees, then lifted him half an inch. No, that was how it felt, not what it did. He reached his door. His mother's voice came through it, warm as always. "You don't have to be afraid." "I am," he said, and she made a sympathetic sound that told him she wasn't talking to him at all. He turned back. Robin stood at the edge of the porch with her head tipped, as if listening to the roof. The windows behind her reflected a room that did not match the room it contained. The diary in his hand throbbed once. He threw it as hard as he could toward the grass. It didn't fall. In the air it slowed, turned, and drifted back as if caught in the wake of something larger. It landed on the porch steps at her feet, as if it had returned to a place it understood. "Please," he said, and he meant everything by it. Robin looked at him with a clarity he recognized from the world before the amulet. "I'm tired," she said. "It isn't." That's the difference. He held it at arm's length. It was possible to not listen and still hear. Robin had said that once, in a way. "In case you're reading this, don't give it your name," he remembered from the diary, and he laughed, a dry, small sound that startled him with its size in the quiet. The amulet did not laugh back. It waited in the middle of his hand, and waiting turned out to be a kind of speech. Across the street, a dog barked twice. A car alarm hiccuped, and then thought better of it. The refrigerator clicked on. It did not click off. He set the amulet on the desk and stepped away. The surface of the disc showed his room in a curve. His hand moved. A fraction later, the reflection moved. The delay was smaller than it had been. He told himself that meant nothing. He told himself many sensible things that sounded like a person building a wall out of paper. When night came, he turned off his light and lay awake, listening, because listening felt safer than sleep. Around 9:17, without the fridge to cue him, he reached for the amulet the way people reach for their phone in the dark. He didn't pick it up. He put one finger on its edge and left it there. A breath rose through the vent once. The amulet warmed. In the colorless room, his reflection smiled a small, startled smile, half a second before he felt it on his face. He kept his finger where it was. He could throw it into the river tomorrow. He could bury it beneath a stone and forget the spot. He could leave town. All of those choices waited obediently at the edge of the night. The disc hummed so faintly it might have been his own blood. Somewhere in the picture of himself on the surface, he thought he saw a second figure step into the doorframe and lift a hand. It could have been the hallway. It could have been the dark. It could have been nothing at all. "Okay," he whispered to the room that had learned his voice. "I hear you." The amulet cooled, as if satisfied. The vent said nothing. Far away, a porch light blinked 3 times. Then the house did what houses do when they choose a side. It settled. It listened. It kept his secrets long enough that even he could forget the order in which they had arrived.